Chapter 47. Civility. Valerius flew down to the courtyard outside of his throne room. As tempting as it was to land in Dragon Strike Square to excoriate and humiliate Ilarion in front of his people, he resisted, and landed only to an audience of Shioni, Simi, and Nagoye. Valerius shifted, and landed in what some people called the superhero pose before gracefully rising to his feet. Immediately, Captain Nagoye was offering him his favorite silk robe, embroidered with silver dragons, to slip on. He drew the cool silk over his body and tied the belt. "Thank you, Nagoye," he said to her.
"My king."
Her eyes went up to the white dragon.
"Did Iolair just... well, did I see what I thought I saw?"
That Iolair made Ilarion transform into his human form? Yes, Nagoye, you did. Valerius could not hide the satisfaction in his tone. While Ice Breath could be useful in a fight, this ability was a true game-changer. Caden was so much safer now than he had been before.
"The other dragons will think twice now before attacking him,"
Nagoye said with a nod. "There will be no more attacks in my skies," Valerius told her. Ilarion's actions had been beyond the pale, if predictable, but his just deserts were incredibly satisfying. Nagoye bowed and moved back to her post by the doors to his throne room. Valerius turned to watch the white dragon slow its descent, and then, like a helicopter landing, drop all the way down to the stone-flagged courtyard. The wind from the white dragon's powerful wings blew Valerius's hair back, and he sheltered his eyes from the dust and leaves that were stirred by the air currents. Shioni stepped over to Valerius.
"Are you all right, my king?"
"You cannot possibly believe that I am harmed. I think you are referring to my temper, and my temper is in check. Besides, how could I not be amused by that?" Valerius pointed to Ilarion, who was still caught in one of Iolair's large clawed hands. Ilarion roared, "Put me down! Put me down now!"
"He reminds me of Fei Ray trapped by King Kong."
Shioni giggled. "You will pay for this, white dragon!" Ilarion howled as he kicked his bare legs. Both Valerius and Shioni were laughing now, though there was some hysteria to it. Shioni brought up a tablet to show him what the local news were reporting. There were helicopters hovering at a safe distance, recording everything, and he could see what they were seeing. "Ilarion will never live this down," Valerius said, with a smile curling the edges of his mouth. "This is almost better than me sending him slamming towards the ground and roasting him." Shioni agreed as she turned up the volume so they could hear the anchor breathlessly saying,
"And after the Green Dragon King Ilarion's unexpected and clearly unauthorized flight over Reach, the White Dragon emitted a call that appears to have shifted Ilarion back into human form. Have you ever heard of a dragon shifter having that power, Tom?"
She was asking the anchor who was in the studio while she was filming from Dragon Strike Square. "No, Carol, this is completely unexpected. But let's hear from our dragon shifter expert, Dr. William Tanaka." Tom, whose hair looked lacquered, turned to a distinguished-looking man in his 50s. Valerius had spoken to Tanaka once. He gave him no answers to his questions, but the professor of shifter studies at Harvard had known more than he'd thought he would about shifters, despite Valerius's reticence. Dr. Tanaka answered in his pleasant voice. "As we are all aware, each dragon shifter has a main breath ability. In the case of our own Black Dragon King Valerius, fire is his main ability. But as he demonstrated today, he has a powerful air breath ability that dissipated the Green Dragon King Ilarion's main breath ability, which is poison. It is rumored that the Black Dragon King Valerius for certain has many more elemental powers than we have ever seen. But as to the White Dragon's ability to actually force the shift, well, this is beyond anything we've seen from the dragons so far." Carol broke in.
"But Dr. Tanaka, are we certain that Iolair truly caused Ilarion to shift? Perhaps he simply had an accident, and Iolaire caught him.
Dr. Tanaka gave her a slightly repressive smile. Dragon shifters like Ilarion are simply too old to have an accident like that. And I think it is pretty clear from his current reaction that Ilarion is none too pleased with the actions of the newest addition to the shifter group. They showed Ilarion's current behavior of hissing and spitting at Iolaire. She only turned off the tablet.
How are you going to deal with this, my king? Ilarion has broken so many of the rules, and he attacked you.
She only said, "Let him dig his hole deeper. Violence is not the answer, for now," Valerius told her. She looked surprised, and one of her eyebrows rose.
I thought you would be eager to do something physical to him.
Oh, I am finding his humiliation far more satisfying. Besides, Iolaire should have its moment of triumph. "You will release me!" Ilarion screamed. Caden looked at Valerius for an okay to let the green dragon shifter down. Valerius gave a brief nod. This caused Ilarion to squawk even louder about how he would not be treated this way, and how dare Valerius and this runt white dragon do this to him, and he'd see them drown in a sea of poison, and on it went. Despite his threats and calumnies, Caden set Ilarion down gently on the courtyard. The green dragon shifter stumbled back. Valerius rather thought he was stumbling away on purpose, so as to get distance between himself and the white dragon, without making it obvious he was running away. Better to be thought clumsy than afraid in Ilarion's mind. Valerius often thought the same thing.
Ilarion does not take well to fear.
She only murmured.
I do not think he will forgive Iolaire for this.
No, likely not. But now, at least he knows that Iolaire, though small, is mighty, Valerius said. "Iolaire made the green dragon afraid," Raziel laughed. "Little white dragon caused him to crash from the sky." Valerius was glad to hear just amusement in his spirit's voice rather than anger. Raziel was in the best of moods. It was proud of the little white dragon that could. But neither Caden nor Iolaire should have had to intervene at all. Ilarion should have respected me, but he did not. I will have to fix that. At that moment, part of Valerius wanted to go over and grab Ilarion by the scruff of the neck before threatening him within an inch of his life. But like Caden had said, that would be giving Ilarion attention. And any attention, good or bad, would be treated as a victory by the green dragon shifter. So he stood there, arms crossed, looking at Ilarion as one might an uninteresting bug. For his part, Ilarion was not looking at Valerius.
Our fears about Iolaire being all but defenseless are seemingly unwarranted.
She only murmured, "We do not know the limits of this gift yet." Valerius murmured.
What do we know about it?
She asked quietly. "It lasts a minimum of 24 hours, unless Iolaire releases the shifter and allows them to transform." Shioni's eyebrows rose.
24 hours? Ilarion will be a madman before that if he is not allowed to shift.
True. Valerius smiled. It was not a nice smile, but he did break the rules of civility. So I am not inclined to ask Iolaire to release him early. The two of them watched, as the green dragon shifter stared daggers at Iolaire, his threats having dried up for some reason. Maybe simply being released had stopped the flow of words. Iolaire merely cleaned its wings, and moved the tip of its tail up and down rather cat-like, with seeming no concern at all for Ilarion's ill temper. Ilarion scowled harder. "Your nonchalance is annoying Ilarion, Caden." Valerius chuckled.
I know, he's really mad. Did you see him hopping up and down before? That was funny.
Caden answered. "Yes. Well, you have made an enemy of him, I think. You must be very careful," Valerius cautioned. He didn't want Caden to get cocky.
I guess I have. Though really, it's bullshit for him to be mad at me, considering everything. He was the one to go on television and say I was his mate. Not to mention he was endangering people.
Valerius shook his head. Ilarion is not logical. He is a bully. He is used to being the strongest. My existence is nearly intolerable to him because I am stronger than him. Yours now. He did not expect you to be able to best him.
Guess he doesn't want to be my mate anymore, thank God.
Caden sounded relieved. Valerius knew that, contrary to Caden's belief, Ilarion would likely want Caden more than before. He would want to possess and lord over Iolaire. That was likely the only way he saw getting his face back. "Why don't you shift?" Ilarion suddenly shouted at Iolaire. "Let us see you in the flesh! Let us see how tough you are in your human form!"
He did not just say that.
She only let out a disbelieving laugh.
What does he think he's going to do? Have a fist fight with the White Dragon Shifter?
Valerius's hands curled into fists. "He will never touch Caden." Iolaire continued with its cleaning, ignoring Ilarion entirely.
We're not going to see Iolaire in its human flesh, dear Ilarion. Iolaire's human side is going to remain a mystery.
Esme's voice drifted out of the double doors. The claw came to attention as she strode out wearing an icy blue dress that flowed around her like mist.
Esme!
She only called gaily, and the women greeted each other with air kisses.
It's so good to see you, dear Shioni. It's been too long.
Esme smiled genuinely at the Sphinx shifter.
It has. You've come at the perfect time, though.
She only looked over at Iolaire.
I had to stick my head out of the sunroof in the vehicle taking me here from the airport to get in on the action.
Esme's eyes slid to Ilarion. He had taken the shortcut by shifting.
But I did see the battle. You were magnificent, as always, Valerius. Raziel is so gorgeous. Those midnight black scales against the peerless blue sky.
Esme kissed Valerius's cheek.
"I am magnificent,"
Raziel agreed. His spirit had always liked Esme, which was rare, as Raziel normally hated most people. "Raziel extends its greetings to you and Scylla," Valerius told her.
Scylla so wanted to fly up there and get involved in things.
Esme's eyes narrowed at Ilarion. He had violated all of their rules, not just Valerius's. To treat one dragon with a lack of respect was to treat them all that way. The delicate balance was kept by each dragon shifter acting carefully around the others. Ilarion had violated all of that.
It was good that you convinced Scylla not to.
She only said,
Iolaire had things well in hand all on its own. Oh yes, I saw that. Everyone saw that.
Esme tittered. Esme gave Ilarion a similar hard smile as Valerius had. The green dragon shifter ignored her. It was really impressive that Ilarion could pretend to be alone on this courtyard with Iolaire. Other than Esme's opening line, none of them had actually directly spoken to him. So there was that. Esme turned fully to Iolaire, who had stopped cleaning to observe her almost shyly. She took a few steps towards the white dragon. Her expression was surprisingly tender.
Aren't you beautiful? Oh my, such a lovely one. I am Esme, the blue dragon. My spirit's name is Scylla.
Esme is a friend, Valerius assured Caden. Though she looks like a stylish grandmother, she has the most strategic mind of all of us.
She seems nice,
Caden exclaimed, and Valerius got an impression of long-lost grandparents from Caden's past that he missed dearly. He wanted to warn Caden that Esme was more like Marben than she was like those fuzzy memories of white-haired older people who brought presents and smiles. But Iolaire was already slowly lowering its head, so that its eyes were even with hers. Iolaire then slow-blinked, cat-like once more. Esme reached out to touch Iolaire.
May I, dear Iolaire?
She asked. Iolaire pushed its nose into her hand. She let out a delighted laugh and was soon scratching and embracing the massive head. She pulled back to gaze at Iolaire with affection. A huff of frost exited Iolaire's mouth. The white dragon looked apologetic, but Esme tisked.
I control water, dear one. We are aligned. You see?
She moved her hand through the last tendrils of drifting fog. They curled around her fingers and then transformed into water droplets that formed a small pool in her hand. Iolaire licked the water up experimentally, which had her laughing delightedly again. She patted Iolaire's nose.
Valerius, Iolaire is quite the charmer.
Esme's pale cheeks were pink with pleasure. Her sea-blue eyes looked quite brilliantly happy. At that moment, Valerius realized that she was glad for this new addition to their kind. He had thought she would be more concerned about the politics of it and the potential disruption of the power balance. It was she who had suggested the splitting of the planet into territories. But at this time, she seemed simply happy to embrace a new spirit in the realm. Iolaire is, at that.
When people find our free audio stories on Spotify or YouTube, they often ask, how is something with the high quality of Edward Fox and all those amazing actors still free? Well, the answer is, it isn't. I and my team are supported by memberships. I run my own private website, wraithrain.com. On this website, I've published gay romance, written stories, manga, and now uncensored podcasts since 2010. It's like my own version of Patreon, which I started because at that time, Patreon didn't exist. If you love this podcast and want to support the creation of more like it, consider joining us as a member and getting access to exclusive members-only stories. I'll tell you how to sign up and what you'll get at the end of this chapter.
Valerius strode towards them, and immediately Iolaire pressed its snout against Valerius's chest. Hot breath gusted over him, nearly blowing his robe off. Shione came over as well. She got a lick from Iolaire in greeting. That left just Simi and Nagoye standing at attention by the doors of the throne room, where they were supposed to be, and Ilarion standing awkwardly a dozen feet away. The green dragon shifter was no longer scowling. Well, no more than he naturally did. He looked thoughtful, which had Valerius feeling uneasy. Ilarion had definitely not given up on getting Iolaire. Seeing Valerius observing him, Ilarion met his gaze evenly. He gave a small smile to Valerius. Well, this visit has not been boring yet, Ilarion said as he approached. Iolaire's head rose abruptly as it turned to regard Ilarion out of cool blue eyes. Ilarion hesitated in mid-step. He finally held up his hands. I have no ill will towards you.
That is hardly what you were saying earlier,
Shione remarked dryly. Ilarion let out a few chuckles that didn't sound authentic. I was startled. I am not used to being manhandled. This coincided with Valerius's own beliefs. Ilarion was off his game. He had revealed too much in that temper tantrum of his. But he expected to come here, and what? Valerius wondered and narrowed his eyes. He has gone too long unchecked. No one can challenge him in his own territory, but here he has had a small dragon take him down to nothing.
It was quite a bit more than that, Ilarion.
Esme's expression was mild, but there was a sharpness to her tone. Ilarion's expression grew dark for a moment, but then with visible effort he smoothed it into a smile with another chuckle and shrug. I had no idea of our newest addition's powers. His gaze hardened for a moment. But next time I won't be caught off guard. Iolaire regarded him with a speculative look. The white dragon spirit was new, but clearly it wasn't a fool. But I would say, let us put this in the past. I am willing to forgive, if you are, Ilarion said to Iolaire.
What the hell? He's willing to forgive? He's the one in the wrong.
Caden cried, clearly furious over Ilarion's behavior.
Not to mention, he needs to apologize to you, not me.
Iolaire turned its head away from Ilarion and pointedly looked at Valerius. Ilarion grimaced, that darkness returning to his expression, but again he made an effort to be apologetic. He spread his arms wide and lowered his head. I see that I am to ask for your forgiveness, Valerius. Ilarion waited for him to say something in return. Valerius was silent for long moments, which caused the green dragon shifter to glance up. I could not resist flying around your beautiful city.
He bit you,
Caden grumbled.
That had nothing to do with sightseeing.
I know, Caden. His lies are transparent and pathetic. Valerius answered.
Green dragon. Pathetic.
Raziel growled. His spirit was watchful. It wanted to make sure that Ilarion made no move towards Iolaire. Raziel was feeling just as protective as he was.
We should crush him.
For once, Valerius wasn't quick to disagree. These actions were tantamount to spitting in his face. He thought, too, of the abuses that the President of the United States and Prime Minister of Canada had brought to his attention. Ilarion was flaunting all the rules. If he did nothing, it might be worse than acting.
I wonder, Ilarion, what your reaction would have been if Valerius had come to Moscow and buzzed those minarets of yours without your permission.
Esme asked, almost sweetly. Ilarion's jaw worked, but then he shrugged. I think it would give my people quite the show. They normally only get to see other dragons on television or the net.
I am surprised that they know there are other dragons out there. After all, you do limit your people's access to the internet, and every television station is state-run.
She only said in the same tone as Esme. Instead of taking offense, Ilarion acted like the two women were simply silly as he said, I think information is overrated. Most people cannot understand their own limited existences, let alone a whole world of them. I make things simpler for my people in this time of information overload. They don't need to unplug and disconnect because their lives are much more in the moment.
Very little information comes out of your territory as well, Ilarion.
Shioni pointed out.
It seems like you do not want anyone to know what you are doing there.
Ilarion's smile was hard. Both I and my people want our privacy. Not all of us want our actions splashed over the news. That first battle between you and Iolaire was quite the sensation, Valerius. Those poor citizens of yours that got in the way. They made such a fuss about peasants dying. That is all what the free press is good for. Valerius gritted his jaw. Every one of my people is precious to me. Then it must have pained you greatly to have crushed so many of them. Ilarion grinned. Valerius did not answer. His temper was starting to fray dangerously again.
Don't listen to him.
Caden sounded disgusted.
He's not worth the time. He hasn't even noticed that you didn't accept his apology.
He will.
Valerius said. He had a plan. He would put it in place. I do not understand why you will not shift. Ilarion was saying to Iolaire. Are you vain? Worried that your human form is not as pretty?
Oh, please. This guy's a jackass.
Caden groused.
The white dragon shifter, like you and your people, Ilarion, values their privacy. None of you will be meeting them in their human form.
Valerius remarked dryly. Iolaire's tail swished happily at his words. He felt Caden's relief at them as well. Ilarion looked like he was sucking on a lemon.
But this is nonsense. How are we to court them if they are unable to speak?
Ilarion cried. He then thrust a finger in Valerius's face.
How do we know this isn't your doing? That you haven't threatened Iolair to remain in dragon form so that you have the advantage over us. The urge to simply bite that finger off was huge in Valerius's mind, but he stayed quite still, not even blinking. I assure you that this is Iolair's decision, and I am surprised that you worry about Iolair speaking to you, considering you just like making pronouncements about it being your mate without a word from it. Ilarion put his hands on his hips and grinned. One needs to be aggressive. Stand back and someone might take your place.
Or you just come off as some creepy, controlling asshat.
Caden remarked. Valerius smiled. Again, it wasn't a nice smile. I assure you, Ilarion, that based upon what I know of Iolair, you could crow every moment of every day, and it wouldn't make much of a difference.
That should be my line, but thanks, since I can't say it.
Caden told him. We shall see. Ilarion appeared completely unrepentant. Esme was back to patting Iolair's snout, and Ilarion moved closer to get in on the action. Iolair let out an angry snort of frost. Esme turned it into a thin glass wall between Ilarion and Iolair.
Do not press your luck, Ilarion,
Esme said dryly.
Iolair does not want you near.
Does this mean you intend to throw your hat into the ring, Esme, and not just be an observer as you usually are? That you are here to court the white dragon too? The Russian accent made the words even more biting. Esme narrowed her eyes at him.
Dear boy, rushing in where angels fear to tread with an arrogant smile on your face might be your way of interacting with the world, but it has never been mine, and my way has served me well throughout the millennia.
As if to prove her point, that her way was better, she scratched under Iolair's chin. Iolair's eyelids shut in pleasure. I just thought that your friendship here with Valerius would preclude such actions by you, Ilarion said. Esme continued to scratch Iolair.
You see things, as always, in a binary way, Ilarion. Mine or yours, yes or no, enemy or ally, all or nothing. It's so interesting.
Ilarion's smile faded a watt. He knew she was insulting him, but couldn't quite figure out how, because, like she had said, he thought of things in those terms and couldn't see what was wrong with it. My way has served me well, too, Ilarion told her stiffly. She answered non-committally, as she continued to scratch Iolair's chin.
If you say so. You have not asked about your ability to shift, Ilarion. I, for one, would be most curious about when you'll be able to do that again.
Ilarion's jaw worked for a moment. I imagine that it will wear off soon. She only let out a soft huff of breath that almost sounded like a laugh. Ilarion's head jerked towards her. If you have something to say, then say it. Ilarion snapped at her. Do not speak to Shioni in that manner. Valerius's voice was cold. Apologize. She... Ilarion stopped himself. He rolled his lips together. I apologize for my tone.
Your apology is accepted, Ilarion. I want you to have a pleasant stay in Valerius's territory,
Shioni said gracefully.
Despite how things have started out, perhaps not having the ability to shift for some period of time would be a good thing.
Alarm flared in Ilarion's eyes. They darted all around. He was realizing that his time stuck in his human form was going to be longer than he'd thought. That was good to see. Are you letting all the dragons come here, Valerius? Ilarion asked as he watched the scratching. I let you come here, didn't I? Valerius pointed out. Ilarion's eyes narrowed. I would have come regardless. There was such tension for a moment that the air seemed to solidify with it. Iolaire let out a low hoot to remind him that violence was not the answer. Simi and Nagoye were alert at the doors, ready to come charging in. Shione's hands flexed together in front of her chest as her gaze skipped between Valerius and Ilarion. Esme concentrated on Iolaire, but he felt her waiting for his reaction. He was going to give it.
We need to crush him,
Raziel repeated from earlier.
Yes, I think we do.
At that moment, there was a commotion at the doors to the throne room. Simi and Nagoye were holding back 3 large men, who from their clothing and grim-faced demeanor were a part of Ilarion's entourage. You remain here until allowed forward, Simi growled at a bear of a man that stood 2 heads taller than him. Not that the snake shifter was intimidated. He looked about ready to strike.
I am here to serve my master,
the bear man snarled in a Russian-accented voice. He was holding a robe for Ilarion. My king has not said that you can come out here, Simi hissed back.
So everybody that serves Ilarion is a bastard,
Cadence said.
Good to know.
Valerius gave a mirthless smile. Then he strode over to the bear man. He pulled the robe out of his hands. The bear man was so startled by his sudden appearance that all he did was open his mouth, but nothing came out.
I will take this. Wait here. I would have words with your master before he retires to his quarters,
Valerius told him. He then went over and took Ilarion's arm firmly by one hand and dragged the green shifter over away from everyone.
Come, Ilarion. I would speak with you.
Ilarion's eyes went a sulphurous yellow at being manhandled yet again. But in their human forms, Valerius was stronger too.
What are you doing, Valerius?
Caden sounded uneasy.
Setting the ground rules,
he answered simply. When they were apart from the others, with a semblance of privacy, Valerius released Ilarion's arm and held up his robe for him to put on. Ilarion's brow furrowed. He was clearly wondering why Valerius was offering to help him into his robe. It was also clear he suspected a trap. Valerius tilted his head to the side and cocked an eyebrow. Slowly, Ilarion turned and allowed Valerius to help him on with the robe. Just as Ilarion had slipped it over both shoulders, Valerius's hands bore down on those same shoulders. Ilarion let out a soft gasp at the pain as Valerius squeezed. Valerius's voice was low.
Ilarion, let me make 2 things clear. Your insults and disrespect towards me are not forgiven, and you will pay for them in due time. Silence!
He squeezed harder on those shoulders. He heard Ilarion's teeth grinding together to keep back the pained sounds that wanted to escape him.
But here is the most important part for that little pea-brain of yours to understand. Are you listening?
You are getting dangerously close to...
Are you listening?
Valerius could have truly crushed some of Ilarion's bones if he had squeezed any harder. Ilarion grunted and nodded. Valerius continued.
If you do anything, if you even attempt to do anything to harm Iolaire, I promise that I will rip your wings off and feed them to you. Is that understood?
There was a half-second of hesitation, but then Ilarion nodded sharply again as Valerius started to squeeze even harder. He let Ilarion go. The green dragon shifter let out an involuntary gasp and reached up to touch his shoulders, but stopped himself. Valerius met Ilarion's shadowed gaze, and with another of those not-nice smiles said,
Now let's get you settled somewhere out of the way.
There are so many completed stories in the archive that will probably never come out as books. I just don't have the time to edit, revise, and publish them all, especially when you consider that I've been writing my own original gay romantic stories since 2010. It is a lot of material. But that doesn't mean these stories are lost and gone forever. You can read all my web novels, even the earliest ones, on my serial subscription site, wraithrain.com. Join for a month or two, because it's an all-you-can-read buffet. If you're worried about recurring fees, it's very easy to cancel, so you can sign up and cancel on the same day as you please. We know this is important, especially for students who often eliminate any distractions during exam time. Link to the subscription form is in the notes.